In your mind, is the structure of a comedy screenplay different from a drama screenplay?
Generally, I'd say they both follow the 3-act structure. The way I view it is it's kind of the same. It's like beginning, middle, end, setups, builds, payoffs. Generally, and I know that different movies and different directors have, broken the said rules. I think for myself, I need to have that sort of structure to help inform how I'm actually going to write the screenplay. I think if there's no rules or set boundaries, that I'm going to really struggle to find a finished screenplay that I'm proud of, but also that I feel is good enough to then actually get made.
So then, as a follow-up, what are the rules then that you follow? Do you have your own rules? Do you follow certain screenwriting books or teachers?
Yeah, I mean, this is, the Inciting Incident, of course. I used to, when I first started writing, I would follow the very set rule. I read Save the Cat, which I know some people have, varying opinions on that, but that was actually really helpful the first time I read that, just to understand kind of those necessary beats to hit. But that Inciting Incident is usually the first thing that I'm, when I have the character in the story, what is that engine that starts everything to go forward?
Right, and because you talked about the meeting where you heard the phrase "Don't tell Larry," you thought that was so funny, and that's kind of, if I'm wrong, or maybe that's the inciting incident in that there's a cover-up at work.
There's a lie about a company party. I realized would it help for the log line?
Oh yeah, I'd love to hear the log line.
So it basically, it's what happens when you tell a little white lie that spirals out of control. But our main character, Susan, in order to get promoted, tells a little white lie to her eccentric new coworker. And as a result of this lie, where she doesn't invite him but blames someone else for not inviting him to this company party that she's throwing because she wants to impress her boss, there are major consequences as a result of her little lie. And things just get worse and worse and worse as she continues to double down and not own up to the truth.
Okay, all right. And we know that Susan she's a rule follower, and she's kind of the good girl and has worked very hard, and so that's kind of not in her nature.
She starts off that way.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where things get interesting?
Yes.
Okay. How did you figure out the structure of the screenplay?
We knew the end of Act 2. So interesting, starting in, again, we had a sense of where we were going to end, and we had our inciting incident. And there were multiple instances of getting that end of Act 1 moment that propels us into, where things start to really ramp up and escalate. The midpoint was something that, again, it kind of changed based on what our main character, Susan's journey was, because Larry's a character in the movie and we knew so much about him, but he's essentially, because we're through the perspective of Susan, he's the antagonist to Susan. So it's just interesting in this case. We knew our antagonist journey before we knew our protagonist journey. And I think as a result of that, there was a lot of changes in what those undefined end of act moments were that we didn't quite know from the start.
So it's interesting because you'd think in horror, to know the antagonist journey might be more important. I don't know, but then it all as well as in comedy. So how it had kind of they inform each other. So
that's true. And this isn't just a comedy; it's a dark comedy, and there are elements of being a thriller, and horror. And I think that's also why we're so attached to that character of Larry, because he's someone who, his presence is always going to be there, and he's someone that whenever he shows up, or even if he's not there, he's going to cause some sort of problem for Susan, our lead.
Right, and just from the little bit that I've seen of Larry, he seems outwardly very confident, almost to the point of maybe arrogance. Little bit, or no?
It was tweaked from that. If you're referring to the pitch video, it was a bit tweaked. Larry is a lonely guy who just wants to be friends. That's that is who that character is. He just wants to be a part of the group, and he just wants to belong and to fit in because he's never been able to. And to not be invited to something, that really hurts him.
Sure.
And so again, it's interesting because in this case, it's just like we're so clear on that moment, but then we just reverse engineering these other characters we had created that we wanted to bring over and other references we made, and it's taking like that core wound essentially, but throwing it into this like heightened reality, somewhat wacky world that we created.
Right, and then you sort of have him butt up against a character who's always like done the right thing and been the good girl.
Who's done the right thing, but now who's at a point where she's not happy with what happened and she's blames Larry, and so she puts herself in a position where she's now at odds with him. So she's the one who makes her own mess.
What makes a dark comedy different from others? Absurdist or, slapstick?
Yeah, I mean, with dark comedy, I do think there's, the opportunity to laugh at death and to laugh at scary, terrible situations. I think that's what kind of differentiates that from the other types of comedy.
Can you tell us about the character Larry in your film Don't Tell Larry and the raisins? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, so I've always thought that what's an eccentric quirk that someone can do that could stick out, could be memorable, but also it's such a simple action could show so much eccentricity. And it's funny because I can't even remember the true origin of specifically the fact that Larry eats raisins with a pencil. Nonetheless, that's what he does. But the first moment he does that, as he's talking casually and normally, all of a sudden Susan and the audience sees that this is someone who's just a little bit off. Our main character, Larry, loves to eat raisins with a pencil. He's obsessed with raisins. His dad, who he never met, supposedly loved the raisins, and he thinks that's his way of potentially connecting with his dad. It's a very flawed way of thinking, but it's coming from a genuine place for him. And then he views himself as a raisin that's a grape that was left in the sun and abandoned. And so he sees himself as a grape and as a raisin, And as ridiculous as that comparison is, he truly believes that. And that, again, his core wound is that he was abandoned and he's alone and he just wants to be liked and to be with other people. And him eating that raisin, him being obsessed with raisins was his way of thinking, well, maybe, that's the way like I can connect with my dad, who I don't even know.
Wow. So you see his core wound in different instances with this thing as his little idiosyncrasies with eating raisins. It's really a metaphor for his core wound in some sense.
It is. And when watching the film, that may not necessarily come across, but that's something that we knew when writing the story, and that helped inform the choices that he makes. He does have a little bit of a monologue where he does explain it a little more. So there's definitely hints of it, but that is kind of the reason why he is who he is and how he is.
Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. Here is a complimentary question from our book Story Questions.